Tonight on an all-new Commish, when a child witnesses a murder,
Are you saying your stepmother pushed the man in the pool?
Rachel commits a crime to protect him.
Your wife kidnapped my son?
You're gonna get in trouble for this, aren't you?
How could you have done this?
Tony's torn between his badge and his marriage.
In the eyes of the law, you've committed a felony.
Then yours.
Just turn yourself in. Now.
An all-new Commish.
Amazing Week continues next as Hunter crashes in on a gangland killing. And when Plan A doesn't work,
Think again, buddy.
always good to have a Plan B. Hunter next.
Listener discretion is advised.
It's a jacked up review show. It's a jacked up review show. Jacked up review show. It's a jacked up review show. It's a jacked up review show. Jacked up review show.
Welcome all once again. I'm here with two exclusive Stephen J. Cannell productions. If that name rings a bell, you might know a producer from both lowbrow and popular TV dramas such as The A-Team, 21 Jump Street, and many, many more. I'm about to talk about two of his other best-known hits. First off, let's start with the show that made TV legend Michael Chiklis a household favorite. That's right, years before he played bad cop Vic Mackey on The Shield. Years before he was making appearances in movies like Nixon, Fantastic Four movies, Pawn, all other sorts of stuff. He before he was making even cameos on Seinfeld and Family Guy, Gotham, this was his go-to thing, and he owned it, both a family man and as well as the main commissioner. He played Tony Scully to a T. The rest of the cast was no slouch either. Oh my God, they owned it. Everybody owned it. John Seigan, the unprofessional guy who had been the former commissioner, who was dirty, was good. Some of the other supporting actors who had been on plenty, you'll see plenty of other guys who went on to do all kinds of other Canadian and American shows, including Roger Cross, you might know from Continuum and Dark Matter, Nicholas Lea before the X-Files. And Melinda McGraw was the real standout, who's being one of the assistant DAs, who's also kind of one of the does some police work. And you might know her as playing one of Gibbs's ex-wives on NCIS, as well as being on X-Files and West Wing. And it was actually co-produced by Roger Corman's New World Picture. He had left the company by then. But Teresa Saldana, the late great Teresa Saldana, was so good as the spouse. And she had been in I Want to Hold Your Hand and Raging Bull, but here, she brought life to this. There were some good moral lessons, but also just some other good talk about, kidnappings, even homophobia. And the music gets way more moody as the show goes on, as do the cases. But David Paymer was good as the brother-in-law who was staying with them, who was cynical. He added a little light humor. There's some episodes that make me roll my eyes just because they're a little cliche and soapy. But for the most part, the show holds up pretty well. After recent rewatch, it can be seen on the religious channel Circle, which is kind of ironic. And I think they had to actually modify some language in some episodes because occasionally there will be a use of damn or son of a bitch. So it can also be seen on Get TV and some of those other cable channels. And it is also able to be streamed on Tubi. It ran for 5 seasons, but the fifth season kind of like In the Heat of the Night, mysteriously was just like 4 episodes. It's basically like leftover 6 episodes, but you can find most of those on YouTube. The show was kind of running out of steam there, but there's plenty of holiday stuff. And, the character Tony is his own special kind of, again, he kind of just goes by the whole don't bullshit a bullshitter. Occasionally he brings up the whole fathers are sorry a lot kind of thing that just makes me cringe. And sometimes he kind of keeps secrets from his wife or asks her to get out of town if he thinks it's going to be a crazy day. And I don't like that at all. I'm sure it happens, but it kind of just acts like, hey, we'll figure it out afterwards. And it just doesn't feel, you have to suspend some belief that you'd be able to sustain that for that long. There is some occasional action, but the show is never about just ending with a gunshot. And it never goes too far to where the whole, hey, cops are your friends. No, fuck that. It doesn't even do that, thankfully. I do think it's glamorized, but it's better than so many other shows where everybody's like doing CSI Jinkies. I solved the case. No Scooby-Doo type mayhem here. Just some very complex, hard to talk about stuff. At one point, he's kind of let go and replaced, and the guy who's replacing him needs his help. So there's a bit of a funny, just kind of dual-edged sword at times, and he gets his job back, but it's an interesting maze that he has to go through. And of course, Mike Post, who scored all kinds of TV shows, including, A-Team and Rockford Files, really has a cool score with this. Some good saxophone without feeling, pornish. But out of the villains, there are some Dog Day Afternoon, occasional Die Hard type episodes at times where involving SWAT snipers and dangerous bank robbers and confused individuals who somehow got themselves into a pickle. So it does do some good showing of the criminals. But one standout that lasted a few episodes was Telly Savalas. I thought that was cool because he was playing against type. And in many ways, Tony Scally the commissioner is two sides of the same coin that is Theo Kojak. So I felt like that was a cool just homage to just show a guy who had made it big playing a TV procedural lead. It's almost like he was unofficially passing the torch, and it was one of Savalas's final roles. But
very three-dimensional characters, great scripts, and you're not just dealing with go get the bad guy every week. You're getting into not just what happens, but the dynamic of why things happen. That's the one thing about that's different between cop shows and a show about a commissioner is with the authority comes perspective. They see how things work, the dynamic of why things happen the way they do. At least they get to look at it.
Yeah.
So it makes it really interesting.
And then when the commissioner goes home and he hangs up his badge, then he sees this beautiful lady.
I know, and I'm really excited about it.
And how do you play into this? Is it Rachel? Is that your
Rachel,
character?
yeah.
What's she like?
Well, I'm his wife, and she's a career woman. She's a school teacher, and we have on the show a 10-year-old son, and we're trying to have another baby, so that's an important storyline.
Intolerably sexy.
And, we have a lot to do with each other. I think she's the person. She is the woman behind the man, someone who encourages him and sets him straight when he needs it a little bit. But it's a really warm, caring person, very family-oriented.
Which is very little of, almost never.
Yes, he's really perfect. On those imperfect moments, Rachel helps him out.
Which happen to happen every show.
It happen to happen to all of us in life every time we turn around. Right?
if you're already a fan of Mike Chiklis on other shows like Accused and The Shield, I thought there's no way he's going to be able to, it's going to be outdated or something, because I would always see parts of it, but I never paid it much attention. And lo and behold, it's just as much a kick-ass show in its own right. Once you get past some slower parts of the first 2 seasons, but altogether, it just really, it finds its own identity, and it's just as complimentary and cool in its own right. I liked how it would even show a gray area. there was one episode in season 3 where Tony's wife was framed for murder, and I thought that was very electrifying. There was a bank heist where Tony's wife was taken hostage, but don't get me wrong, she's never made to be a victim, and she stars up in all kinds of other stuff. There's plenty of episodes where there is no crime solving, and it's just a complex family chat. Brian Keith was a crazy hitman in a cliffhanger finale of season 3, and I liked how that was a tough predicament where they were like, "Hey, did you intend to kill him?" And it's like, "No, this guy took my family hostage, and I retaliated." There was one cool one involving a Japanese company takeover, and Ernest Borgnine was the guest star as a neighbor and everyone's literally having to get over their bigotry while also realizing, hey, you're a giant corporation. You can't just come into this smaller town and, just act like you're the new boss in town. It's set in Eastbridge, which is a fictional suburban town in New York. But yeah, kind of like LA Law, it's just really good at just being very natural and having characters find an atypical solution, and it's often again in a gray area. So it's showing office politics. That's really the key of it, and also just realizing that, hey, you can't make it all go away. I love how at times he would have an unpopular opinion and have to try and find ways to make people respect each other. And sometimes it didn't get easy, and he just like, hey, you're suspended with or without pay, and you're treating other people like garbage, and I'm not going to stand around and let you mouth off to these guys with disrespect. And just some of the other supporting patrol officers were good too. They really just showed how tough it could be just trying to fit in, let alone find just questionable areas where drugs were happening or where there was probably a school attack. I wouldn't say it was ever like extremely detailed, but it did have some food for thought on occasion. But without just being a case of the week.
We'll return after these messages.
If you like small town mystery, crazy news, and wild history, then the Florida Men on Florida Man podcast is for you. Each week, Josh Mills and Wayne McCarty bring you the absolute best Florida has to offer. So if you're looking for a show that's safe for the family, but funny enough to help you escape everyday life, then listen to the Florida Men on Florida Man podcast. That's Florida Men, plural, on Florida Man podcast.
Hey, it's Brent Pope, the host of Breakfast with Brent Pope. You've seen me on some of your favorite TV shows saying things like, "Give it up, Jimmy. You got to sink this putt to win." On Breakfast with Brent Pope, I sit down with guests from the entertainment world, and we do it all over breakfast. Or should I say Brentfast? Every week on Brentfast, you get inside Hollywood info and tips, great breakfast recs and foodie debates. Most of all, you get the most delightful 30 minutes of your week. So dig in. It's Brentfast time. Listen at Brentfast.com, Apple Podcasts, or wherever fine podcasts are found.
The Jacked Up Review Show podcast is honored to be part of the Blind Knowledge Podcast Network. Join anytime, talk the talk, and enjoy yourselves. There's something enlightening for everyone with this crowd of cool cats. Check them out. Now let us move on to a show that predated this. That's also really awesome. I've been going through it, and it's created by Frank Lupo, who also created Renegade, Riptide, Wise Guy, and the A-Team for Stephen J. Cannell. He also later was a second producer for the first season of Walker, Texas Ranger, but I think he's got plenty of talent. He's got plenty of other great credits, including DJ and the Bear, and Magnum P.I., Galactica, but Hunter is one cool thing. I love me some Rick Hunter. I also love Dee Dee. Stephanie Kramer was a talented actress who'd done some modeling. And Fred Dreyer was, a football player. Totally atypical casting, but damn it, it gels. It gels so well. So many unusual recurring characters. I like how they change up the police captains every season, including John Amos from Roots and Die Hard 2, and Bruce Davison, who you might know from other stuff, just various LGBTQ dramas, as well as the Melting Center and X-Men. And there was even some other recurring characters that I forgot about, but researching again is like, oh, that's right. Saturday Night Live's Garrett Morris played Sporty, criminal informant. Tim Thomerson was even in one as a detective briefly. It's like he was almost like about to replace Hunter. I'm glad that didn't happen. I love me some Thomerson, but that just couldn't fly. And some of the creators came in. They brought in George Geiger, who had worked on Scarecrow and Miss King and Miami Vice. And the show is kind of two sides of that coin at times. Definitely some Miami Vice type stuff, except I actually like the art direction and stylings and cases. And you can even see where something like CSI Miami might get some inspiration from. But the show just stands out because they try to create some kind of plausibility. They have all kinds of other just criminal informants, cops who've been bribed, or just unusual robberies or drug lords. There's a lot of explosive two-parters too, and some wicked guest stars. And they tried reviving it in 2003. I couldn't find any episodes of those. Once again, this show is airing very much like Kojak and COMMISH on many of the same channels, including Tubi, for internet streamers, as well as cable channels like Cozy, Get TV, and even MeTV. So yeah, it rules. I'm not sure which versions are streaming. I take it's probably the syndicated versions, because some of the music definitely feels of the time. You can kind of tell when some of it might have been replaced just because of music rights. I don't know why. But it's also just one of those shows that, again, it lasted as long as it did because it respected its audience. It didn't try to do anything too absurd. The characters, the duo themselves respected each other while giving each other hell, but they admired each other. They weren't trying to sleep with each other. They weren't trying to also just be reckless. Like, again, we know the actors' real life politics, but at least they're old school instead of just, hey, I want to kill anything that moves or beat everybody up. No, sir, not that kind of show. And Hunter will get his hands dirty, but it's just because he knows that whoever he's going after is a scumbag who's just gonna keep causing mayhem. That's what sets him off. That's what makes him do what he does. Never does he become something like Cobra or a Death Wish type thing where you're just like, okay, they just want to use every character and paint him as a plot device just so he can kick their ass or shoot them to death. And I like how there's various, threatening to suspend people, and Dee Dee's just really taut, and there is some traumatic stuff that happens to her, and they deal with it, I think, just really well without making her be out to be a victim. And I applaud them for making those choices, as well as thinking and putting some thought into this without trying to offend anybody. Just that very, very rare deal. And, there's plenty of wickedly cool procedurals, but, so many of them have not aged well because they had stuff that was never cool, but that glamorized. And, there's plenty of other shows where you can watch, but you don't really enjoy because everyone's kind of a shithead outside of solving crimes, or they're weird, or they just do the CSI where we have 72 hours and we solve the case. Whoop-de-doo. And it's like no suspense because you've done it to death. But no, really, really wickedly cool. Two winners from Cannell, and I would definitely, you cannot, if you're going to name his top 10 shows he ever did, these are going to be on there without a doubt. the commish had heart and soul and was very well paced, gorgeous Canadian scenery, and Hunter, so many beautiful LA locations with, the dialogue wasn't award winning, but it wasn't slouchy either. It was just so effective at it made good use of subtext. And anyone who wonders what does that mean, just where you're saying something, but you're saying it differently, and it has the overall same meaning. It was taught. It has something for everybody. So if you're a Law and Order CSI guy, you're going to like a show like that. But you'll also like it somehow, actually, if you're a Stephen J. Cannell completist. So if you already like stuff like Riptide or Wise Guy or even the Looney A-Team, you're going to like it too, because it has some of that escapism. It delivers on the drama and it delivers on the action, and the characters are living and breathing without feeling like they exist just to be pretty faces or do one versus the other. I mean, it's not like a lesser X-Files episode where one character, serves to just protect the other. But see, that was a good show too, that would overcome predictability by having an extra few plot twists or sometimes going in a totally different direction than expected. So, every show has its formulaic or lesser moments, but the show is pretty effective for the full 7-season run, which is pretty good. I've never heard anybody go, hey, that show went downhill. It also launched James Whitmore, his junior's acting career, and that's where he started becoming a recurring director, and the rest is history. He has helmed numerous hours of TV from that point on. And some of the other supporting actors are cool too. So many to name. You'll find plenty of Twilight Zone, Star Trek, Outer Limits, and Dragnet type actors on here, as well as people who would be in some Stallone movie or Charles Bronson actioner. So good casting by whoever was running that department. And again, just there's a cool car, but I think what puts this aside from, say, something like Nash Bridges is they're never going so far where you're like, okay, no. Doesn't happen in real life. Just too much to buy into. And I like how you can have characters who respect one another, who analyze each other's flaws. But man, if you're going to name me like best buddy duos of all time, obviously I'll say Scully and Mulder from X-Files, Riggs and Murtaugh from Lethal Weapon, 48 Hours, some of the Die Hard movies. But I'm going to put Hunter and Dee Dee in there because, man, what a duo. So thank you for listening, guys, and to all a good night. Send us some suggestions, send us some fan mail. We'll read it. We'll do it. Let us know.
Follow us on the web on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. The podcast is available on Podbean, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Anchor, Apple, and anywhere else podcasts are available. Feel free to review our show and leave comments on any of those sites. Thanks a million for listening.
It's a jacked up